Welcome to Called Higher Bible Studies. I'm Sarah, and today we will be talking about Matthew 14:22-36, the story of Jesus walking on water. Now, reading from the NIV, it says, "Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side. While he dismissed the crowd, after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. 'It's a ghost,' they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, 'Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid.' 'Lord, if it's you,' Peter replied, 'tell me to come to you on water.' 'Come,' he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, 'Lord, save me.' Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. 'You of little faith,' he said, 'why did you doubt?' And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, 'Truly you are the Son of God.'" So I have 3 points for us. The first is open the door. The second is walk into the storm. And the third is trust God. So number 1, open the door. The disciples are in a massive storm. Verse 24 says they are buffeted by the waves, and Jesus calls Peter to step out of the boat. Now, Peter and Jesus would have spent almost every day together. Picture someone you walk to school with, someone you sit next to in work, someone you eat lunch with every day. That is who Jesus was to Peter, and yet he thought he was a ghost. The storm was so bad that he couldn't recognize the face of his best friend, and yet Jesus calls Peter to step out of the boat. It also is predicted that this was around 3 a.m. It was pitch black, it was dark, it was dangerous. So why would the God of love call Peter to step out into a storm? Now, what most people miss is what Peter actually says to Jesus first. In verse 28, he says, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on water." Jesus called Peter to prove that he was Lord, but why would Peter possibly request to be called out into the water? This is Peter demonstrating faith. Originally, they think that Jesus was a ghost, remember? Now, this is significant because a ghost is a symbol of death after death. Jesus is a symbol of life after death. So what Peter is actually saying is, I will either die or live if I step off this boat, but if you are the God of life, if you are Jesus, call me and I will live. And what happened? Verse 29. "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards God. Just to reiterate, if it wasn't Jesus, Peter would have drowned. But Peter can't see Jesus' face. He's still in that storm. He can't see Jesus' face. All he can do is hear his voice. This is faith. This is also a common theme in the Bible, Jesus being just out of sight, but calling for you to let him in, asking for you to let him in. In this passage, Jesus spoke first. He said, "It is I, do not be afraid." But Peter was the one who had to come and make the choice of faith. Jesus, because of free will, Jesus won't make that choice for you. In Matthew 7:8, Jesus says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks the door will be opened." In Revelation 3:20, God says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him and he with me." So number 1 is open the door, step off the boat. What does that look like? Ask Jesus if he's there. Pray to him, even if you feel like you can't see him, and question, just as Peter did, what in my life could be an act of God? Where are my blessings? Ask them, are you Jesus? The passages above don't say, "For everyone who asks might receive. The one who knocks, the door might be opened. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I might come into him." No! When Peter called Jesus, he said, "Come." He will always say, "Come." He will always want you to come. But stepping over the ledge, stepping off of the boat, opening the door isn't easy. I don't know if any of you have ever gone skydiving. I haven't. Or bungee jumping. I also haven't. But what I have done is abseiling or high diving. Stepping over the ledge isn't easy. But You will walk if you ask Jesus to walk with you. You will survive. Now, also, do not think that because you're Christian, you don't have ledges to step over. That's just rubbish. Peter was already a Christian. Where in your life do you need to step out of the boat and hand it over to Jesus? What are you holding on to? The boat is a metaphor for a false comfort zone. The boat is a false comfort zone. Where you may think you're safe in the middle of a storm is in a boat, but Jesus is the real comfort zone. In verse 32, it says, when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. The they there is referring to Jesus and Peter. When Jesus came onto the same boat, same place, same storm, only then did the storm die down. There is no such thing as a physical comfort zone. There's only a spiritual one. Open the door into areas that are uncomfortable, painful. Open the door into your storms and stop hiding in false comfort zones and find the real one. That leads me on to point number 2, walk into the storm. Jesus didn't come right up to the boat. This is a relationship. He will walk halfway. Sometimes he will walk more than halfway, but he wants you to close the gap. He will help you in that gap, just as he helped Peter. But he wants you to close it. And that's not selfish of Jesus. I think people call this selfish way too much, but we have to understand that Jesus, this passage says that Jesus was praying safely on the land. He was on the shore. So to speak, in the kingdom of heaven right now, he's with God. Some context to this is just before this passage was the feeding of the 5,000. And just before the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus had gotten into the boat that the disciples are in now because he wanted some alone time. And they called him to go and talk to the 5,000. So Jesus has desperately been trying to get some alone time. He's finally got some to pray. And what does he do? He walked into Peter's storm to meet him there. Jesus wasn't being selfish, he was being sacrificial. Jesus didn't force Peter to get to the land to meet Jesus where he was at. Jesus walked into Peter's storm to meet Peter where he was at. There's an amazing quote by Tony Evans. Sometimes God lets you hit rock bottom so that you will discover he is the rock at the bottom. This is the Christian God. This is a brilliant example of why God came as man and died on the cross. He meets us where we are at. Jesus doesn't stop your storms, but he meets you there so that you can find peace within them. Walking into the storm is Peter acknowledging that Christians aren't excluded from having problems. But guess what? When you walk into the storm, you will walk on water. All of those mental hardships, all of those battles you're facing, all those troubles you have, everything, your biggest fears, everything, Jesus puts them below your feet. Jesus takes away their power to hurt you. They cannot. If you acknowledge your problems, call to Jesus, walk into the storm, your problems cannot have power over you. In other words, Peter discovered freedom. He discovered this gift of freedom that Jesus is offering us. That leads me to point number 3, trust God. Verse 30 starts with, but. Doesn't what I've already said sound brilliant? Why does it say, but? Verse 30 says, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Maybe you're going strong. Maybe you've just come back from church, did a Bible study, listened to your favourite worship song, stepped over that ledge and in a moment of faith, felt secure for a second, just as Peter did when he stepped off of the boat. But the reality of your problems hits you, overwhelms you. Isn't it like just wild that Peter was face to face with God, literally face to face with Jesus, had just experienced this incredible miracle of walking on water and yet doubted? No, that's not wild. That's us. Have you ever met a Christian who hasn't gone through a season of doubt? Peter is a human. He doubted God, and in his doubt he started to drown. This is not saying that those who don't believe won't witness miracles. This is saying that those who don't believe have no defense against the troubles in their life that are trying to drown them. This is saying that your problems are real, and without Jesus, they can destroy you. But what did Peter do? Even though he just took this incredible act of faith, what did he do again? Verse 30, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. He shouted to God for a second time. As humans, we are constantly going to be hit hard. and we are constantly going to have to turn to God. But constantly turning to God is not a hardship. Don't you understand? Don't you get it? Constantly turning to God is a gift. There is no limit on the amount of times that we can ask God to save us. There is no too far gone. What happened when Peter asked for a second time? Did Jesus go no? Did Jesus get frustrated? No, what happened is my favourite word in this whole passage, the word immediately. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. There is no point that you can go which is too far out of reach for Jesus. When you ask for God to come into your life, he will immediately grab your hand. He will immediately hold you up. He will immediately make you safe. God lifts up Peter, brings him back to the boat. So there are my 3 points for you. You must open the door, you must walk into the storm, and you must trust God. This doesn't just benefit you. All of the disciples were on that boat. All of the disciples were in danger in the storm. But actually, Peter's faith stopped the storm for all of them. And not only that, but when they got back onto the boat, verse 33, then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. If you step out into your storms, if you are bold in the face of your troubles, you will spread the message of Jesus onto those around you.